Hey, everybody, and welcome to the 5 Bytes podcast. I'm your host, Rory Monahan. Coming up on this week's episode, Google announces its largest acquisition ever. Also, recent Windows update removes the Copilot app, and a rare case of hardware performing better as it ages. For this and more, keep listening to this episode of the podcast, which, of course, as always, is brought to you by my sponsors. And that includes Numecent, the inventors of the first and only cloud-native container management platform for Windows desktops, and also brought to you by Master Packager, who make an application packaging software that helps you build packages that end users love, enterprises want, and the Windows OS needs. If you enjoy the show each week, you have these awesome sponsors to thank. And now for some news. Alphabet has announced the acquisition of New York-based Israeli-founded cybersecurity firm called Wiz, which offers a set of products for monitoring and providing security reports across cloud platforms, highlighting things like security risks, known vulnerabilities, and more. Wiz will become part of the Google Cloud division. If you listen to this podcast regularly, you may think to yourself, wait, didn't they already buy Wiz? Well, on a couple of previous episodes of the podcast, I did cover that it had been reported previously that Alphabet was expected to announce the acquisition of Wiz within days. And then, the very next episode, a few days later, I reported that it had not proceeded. So, the talks actually stalled last year at a lower $23 billion valuation, with claims that it was due to the concerns the acquisition would not be possible due to antitrust concerns. But it has now completed for $32 billion instead, making this the largest ever acquisition by Google. And perhaps to head off antitrust concerns, Google has confirmed that Wiz's products will continue to be available across competitor cloud platforms, including AWS, Microsoft Azure, and Oracle Cloud. Speaking of Wiz, the researchers were involved in reporting a concerning supply chain attack that exposes credentials of more than 23,000 organizations. The organizations were compromised with a credential-stealing code after attackers gained unauthorized access to a maintainer account. The corrupted package, tj-actions/change-files, is part of a tj-actions collection of files that's used by more than 23,000 organizations. tj-actions is one of many GitHub Actions, a form of platform for streamlining software available on the open source developer platform. Actions are a core means of implementing what's known as a CI/CD, short for continuous integration and continuous deployment. And those are going to be things that I think most listeners to this podcast will already be aware of. But for their part, Wiz said, quote, while conducting threat hunting related to this malicious activity, in several instances, Wiz threat research has observed the deployment of a script designed to dump secrets as part of the malicious payload's execution. Additionally, Wiz Threat Research has so far identified dozens of repositories affected by malicious GitHub action, including repos operated by large enterprise organizations. In these repositories, the malicious payload successfully executed and caused secrets to leak in the workflow logs. Some of the leaked secrets we've identified so far include valid AWS access keys, GitHub personal access tokens, NPM tokens, private RSA keys, and more, end quote. The supply chain attack was first spotted by security firm Step Security, which said it came to notice through an anomaly detection when an unexpected endpoint appeared in the network traffic. The incident appeared to begin around 9 a.m. Saturday in Pacific time, so this is an attack that has been pretty rapid. So this is an incident that has been developing pretty rapidly. Anyone responsible for a system that uses the tj-actions GitHub action should carefully inspect their systems to check for signs of compromise. The supply chain attack should also serve as a reminder for administrators to review any GitHub actions they use to ensure they use cryptographic hashes instead of tags, that point of code that has been vetted previously. And credit to Ars Technica for the source of this article. I also saw this reported by The Verge too. Congratulations to all at Nerdio, who reportedly received $500 million in Series C funding. TechCrunch.com reported Nerdio's valuation has now quadrupled since its Series B funding 2 years ago, and it's now in unicorn territory, though the company wouldn't reveal a specific valuation according to TechCrunch. Nerdio's chief revenue officer, Joseph Landis, told TechCrunch, quote, "We are not disclosing the specific valuation, but it is north of $1 billion, end quote. I recall seeing a graphic, I think, shortly after this that said $1.2 billion, but maybe that wasn't from Nerdio themselves. I'm not sure. I can't remember where I saw it. Nerdio also wouldn't confirm what the ownership percentages are across its investors, but it said that the founders retain a significant stake in the company. Nerdio says that it plans to use its investments to enhance its product lineup across key Microsoft services, including Azure Virtual Desktop, Windows 365, and Microsoft 365. The company also says that it plans to bolster its headcount, which currently sits at 300 employees. It would be interesting to see that with this investment, will they go cross-cloud? So not just Microsoft specific, as a lot of larger organizations don't just rely on one cloud provider. They tried to kind of spread the load across like Azure, AWS, and others. So very cool. Congratulations to Nerdio, and looking forward to see what development comes out of this. In a pretty major whoopsies, Microsoft has confirmed an issue with the latest Windows updates that unpins and uninstalls the Copilot app, with some in the community joking that getting rid of the Copilot app from their Windows 11 machine was an incentive for them to install the updates. Hardy har har. Microsoft, for their part, said, quote, "We're aware of an issue with the Microsoft Copilot app affecting some devices. The app is unintentionally uninstalled and unpinned from the taskbar. Microsoft is working on a resolution to address this issue. In the meantime, affected users can reinstall the app from the Microsoft Store and manually pin it to the taskbar," end quote. Now, this is where I edited in a little bit of an update, which kind of makes that last comment redundant for Microsoft. But they have now updated their advisory to say that the bug has been fixed and that affected devices are being returned to their original state. There has also been reports of updates failing to install with this month's Patch Tuesday Windows updates on Windows 11 24H2, and suggestions that some systems actually experience blue screens of death after attempting to install the updates, according to a report from Forbes. Windows latest also reported instances of RDP connections dropping too. So as always, patch early, patch often, but tread lightly because, Windows updates do have a tendency to cause problems. So keep an eye out. Microsoft is investigating a known issue that causes the new Outlook email client to crash when users click the Go to Classic Outlook button, which should help them switch back to the Classic Outlook. Some users have reported when they click the Go Back option, the application just closes and the Classic Outlook is not installed. As a workaround, you can reportedly install the Classic client by clicking via a store link provided by Microsoft in a support document, which I'll link to with this episode. And this is episode 378. You'll find that at 5bytespodcast.com. And also, according to BelievingComputer.com, those who want to switch back could also just download the standalone Outlook Classic client for Windows or install it from the Microsoft Store. In a follow-up to a recent story I covered on this podcast about 2 VS Code extensions that were removed by Microsoft after concerns they were malicious due to containing what was deemed to be suspect code at the time, well, they have now been restored, with Microsoft's Shane Hanselman actually apologizing via the GitHub issues, stating, quote, "The publisher account for Material Theme and Material Theme icons was mistakenly flagged and has now been restored," end quote. And I'll just point out, this is about Material Theme and Material Theme icons. Those are the names of the actual VS Code extensions in this actual incident where they were removed. But yeah, to go on with what Shane said, he also said, "In the interest of safety, we moved fast and we messed up. We removed these themes because they fired off multiple malware detection indicators inside Microsoft, and our investigation came to the wrong conclusion. Again, we apologize that the author got caught up in the blast radius, and we look forward to their future themes and extensions. We responded with him and thanked him for his patience." Personally, I think this is a good approach. If you heard this story when I reported it on a previous episode, the developer at the time was quick to defend themselves and said that there was no malice code in their code. And it appears that they have been vindicated in the end. And it's nice that, Microsoft and Shane was so kind of forthright and honest. The Register reported on criticisms from the science community about Microsoft's claims of a major breakthrough in quantum computing, with one researcher going as far to label it as essentially fraudulent. The announcement was, of course, something I covered on a previous episode of the podcast. It was the Majorana 1 chip that Microsoft had announced. And that includes the discovery of greater efficiency and the production of this chip with significantly greater capacity than ever before, and it could make for the type of quantum computing that sci-fi has depicted for years, but the current technology has yet to provide. So it was quite an exciting and emphatic announcement from Microsoft, and something that Satya Nadella himself had lauded. But Henry Legg, a lecturer in theoretical physics at the University of St. Andrews in the UK, recently published a preprint critique that argues that Microsoft's work is, quote, not reliable and must be revisited, end quote. Vincent Murek, an experimental physicist at the German National Research Organization Forschungszentrum Jülich, and also Sergei Frovlov, a professor of physics and astronomy at the University of Pittsburgh in the US, took to YouTube to criticize, quote, distractions caused by unreliable scientific claims from Microsoft Quantum, end quote. Some in the science community will be seeing Microsoft at an American Physical Society meetup next week, but it has been suggested by at least Frovlov that it won't lead to any more credence to Microsoft's previous claims, or in fact towards the claims of those out here denying Microsoft's claims. So don't expect any clarification after that meetup next week. And to counter all the criticisms or counterclaims, Microsoft have stated, quote, disclosure and skepticism are all part of the scientific process. That is why we are dedicated to the continued open publication of our research so that everyone can build on what others have discovered and learned. In fact, we brought over 100 scientists and physicists together recently to spend the day with us going over our research, end quote. Now, I mean, I would tend to just gut reaction and go, well, oh, big evil corporation. Scientists that are working in universities, they seem more trustworthy. But also, the skeptic in me sees Microsoft as a large corporate entity that's publicly traded and thinks, making these kind of grandiose statements about a product that's coming out in a few years' time is kind of risky for a publicly traded company. If people invested based off of that statement from Satya Nadella, for example, and it doesn't come to fruition years down the line, Microsoft may be facing a class action lawsuit and an investigation from the SEC. So I would like to think Microsoft would be careful with these types of announcements. And I guess we're not going to have an answer in the short term, so it's just something we're going to have to watch into the future. This week, Citrix and Google announced an enhanced partnership around Google Chrome Enterprise Premium in the Citrix platforms. Stephen Gallagher of Citrix stated on LinkedIn that businesses will benefit from Citrix and Chrome Enterprise's collaboration across malware detection and prevention, with advanced protection against malware, phishing, social engineering, and unauthorized data access, data protection via advanced data loss prevention that stops corporate data from being inadvertently or intentionally sent outside of the company, including generative AI, centralized management, simplified browser management with integrated analytics and policy-driven configurations, and also deepened zero-trust network access capabilities through Citrix Secure Private Access, which offers seamless VPN-less access to private applications with enhanced protocol and network controls, as well as other key features such as microsegmentation, limiting lateral movement in an attack. So, yeah, pretty interesting movement. It will be interesting to see if Citrix aligns even more closely with Google and their efforts towards a Google Workspace and kind of building out that business. Mozilla is warning Firefox users to update their browsers to the latest version to avoid facing disruption and security risks caused by the upcoming expiration of one of the company's root certificates. Bleepycomputer.com reports that the Mozilla certificate is set to expire Friday, March 14th. So by the time you listen to this, it has already expired. And it was used to sign content, including add-ons for various Mozilla projects and Firefox itself. So it's not just the browser that's affected. Users need to update their browsers to Firefox version 128 or later and ESR version 115.13 or later for extended support releases. So if you're on the latest Firefox, you have nothing to worry about. If you're not and you're not noticing any issue, well, you may notice an issue when you try to go and use some certain add-on within Firefox, for example. FSLogix version 25.02 has been released, and this appears to be a release that's focused on fixes. For example, FSLogix containers that do not attach and prevent users from signing into a new session. This is one of the fixes that has been deployed. Also, for those with FSLogix rules that do not apply to users as expected, search indexer.exe crashing in Windows Server 2016, and also for those affected by an issue where after signing in, a user receives an error message that the recycle bin is corrupted, and more. And I'll share a link if you want to see the full release notes for yourself with this episode. Oracle have announced general availability of JDK24 for developers, enterprises, and end users. This JDK has delivered 24 enhancements in total. They cover improvements to the Java language, APIs, performance, and the tools included in the JDK. Notably, from a quick peruse of the release notes, it appears multiple x86 or 32-bit abilities are being deprecated or removed. So, just a sign of the times. According to bleepycomputer.com, at least 11 state-backed hacking groups from North Korea, Iran, Russia, and China have been exploiting a new Windows vulnerability in data theft and cyber espionage zero-day attacks since 2017. The researchers who submitted a proof-of-concept exploit through Trend ZDI's bug bounty program to Microsoft stated that they discovered nearly 1,000 shell links, so that's those .lnk files for desktop shortcuts, that exploit ZDI-CAN-25373. However, it is probable that the total number of exploitation attempts are much higher than this. And this is far from the first time that .lnks have been a source of vulnerabilities, by the way. I won't get into the ins and outs of how the exploit works, as this seems to be another long episode of the podcast, but I'll share a link to an article that covers it if you want to see how these researchers' exploit is working. Now, you may be saying, hang on, ZDI-CAN-25373. Well, that's not the usual MITRE tracking ID. And you'd be right. Apparently, according to the researchers, as of this recording, Microsoft has declined to address this vulnerability with the security patch, which seems a bit crazy if it is this active. So hopefully they change course and do address this. I'm pretty sure I covered this next story previously, and it is something that people have been griping about on social media for a while. But those in the Canary and Dev channels for Windows 11 have noticed AI enhancements in Notepad. If it arrives to production on a version of Windows, you are going to see an ability to summarize information in Notepad by highlighting a chunk of text, right-clicking it, and then selecting Summarize. Besides the AI summaries, Microsoft is also testing the ability to view your recently closed files in Notepad, which, maybe from a menu, I guess, because from what I could see in at least Windows 11, Notepad is reopening notes, which is actually problematic in my opinion. Sometimes during a demo, I put something in there that I don't want coming back when I'm sharing a screen, for example. But it's also bringing a new feature to the snipping tool called Draw and Hold. And when marking up a screenshot using the app, you can hold your cursor for just a little longer when drawing a line, an arrow, rectangular, oval, and then it'll automatically straighten out your lines, which is something that the iPhone has been doing for a couple of years in the photo app, but it's really, really useful. So I'm excited to have that ability on a PC too. Right as I finished recording last week's episode, OpenAI announced new tools to simplify the creation of advanced AI agents capable of handling complex, multi-stage operations for both developers and businesses. The new Responses API is a new API for developers to take advantage of OpenAI's built-in tools to build agents, and it combines the simplicity of chat completions with the tool use capabilities of the Assistance API. Using a single API call, developers can execute complex tasks using multiple tools, including their web search, file search, and computer use, and handle multiple model turns. Now, it mentioned web search, file search, and computer use. I won't get into the nitty gritty here because, again, this is a pretty long episode, but something I found of interest reading through this is that the API will provide a way for developers to easily find relevant information from large volumes of files via the file search. It will support multiple file types, query optimization, metadata filtering, and custom re-ranking. And the file search tool is priced at $2.50 per 1,000 queries, and file storage at 10 cents per day with the first gig free. So that idea of kind of private AI or local AI could make this kind of appealing, just to utilize the model to query through like a cache of documents. That's something I actually blogged about on my own site, rorymon.com, recently using different solutions to this. So pretty interesting. NVIDIA rolled out personal AI supercomputers called DGX Spark and DGX Station, both powered by their Grace Blackwell platform. They're specifically built for running neural networks, and 5 major PC manufacturers will build these supercomputers. The systems aim to bring AI capabilities to developers, researchers, and data scientists who need to prototype, fine-tune, and run large AI models locally. DGX systems will be able to serve as a standalone desktop AI lab or bridge systems that allow AI developers to move their models from desktops to DGX Cloud or any AI cloud infrastructure with just a few code changes. The smaller of the DGX Spark features the GB10 Grace Blackwell Superchip with Blackwell GPU and 5th generation Tensor cores from NVIDIA that deliver up to 1,000 trillion operations per second for AI. The more powerful DGX Station includes the GB300 Grace Blackwell Ultra Desktop Superchip with 784 gig of coherent memory and the Connect X8 Super NIC supporting networking speeds of up to 800 gigabit per second. The major manufacturers that will be in the mix includes Asus, Dell, HP, and Lenovo. You can expect these DGX Station quality kind of supercomputers in late 2025. Additional partners for these includes Lambda, Supermicro, and more, so it's not just specifically in the PC hardware space. And since the systems will be manufactured by different companies, NVIDIA did not mention any pricing specifically for the units. However, back in January, they did mention that the base level configuration for a DGX Spark-like computer could retail for around $3,000. According to The Verge, OpenAI and Google are pushing the US government to allow their AI models to train on copyrighted material, which they're already doing. Both companies outlined their stances in proposals published this week, with OpenAI arguing that applying fair use protections to AI is a matter of national security. Yeah, that breaks through the red tape over there anyway. The proposals come in response to a request from the White House, which asked governments, industry groups, private sector organizations, and others for input on President Donald Trump's AI Action Plan. The initiative is supposed to enhance America's position as an AI powerhouse while preventing burdensome requirements from impacting innovation. In its comment, OpenAI claims that allowing AI companies to access copyrighted content would help the US avoid forfeiting its lead in AI to China, while calling out the rise of DeepSeek. Anthropic, the AI company behind the chatbot Claude, also submitted a proposal of its own, but it did not mention anything about copyright. Instead, it asked the US government to develop a system to assess an AI model's national security risks and to strengthen export controls on AI chips. So, yeah, I tried to avoid politics on this podcast because really it's kind of an escape from it. That's pretty much mainstream news is all politics now. And it's kind of sometimes unavoidable when it comes to regulations of technology and stuff like that. But I said a few weeks ago, or maybe a couple months ago, that things would change probably when it comes to regulation. It seemed like the U.S. and the European regulators were kind of aligned and in lockstep. But it seems like those days are probably numbered now. And I would imagine OpenAI and these companies are probably going to get what they want, and they'll have carte blanche access going forward to whatever data they want. Is that going to be a net positive for, the world? I'm not so sure, but I guess we'll see. But hey, at least Anthropic's proposal seemed to lean more towards, responsible AI, which seems to be something OpenAI has kind of verged away from. Speaking of Anthropic, Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei was recently questioned about Anthropic's late 2024 hiring of an AI welfare researcher, Kyle Fish, and the potential for sentience or lack thereof of future AI models and whether they might deserve moral consideration and protections in the future. According to a report by Ars Technica, the response was interesting. Dario suggested the potential for giving the model a button that says, "I quit this job." He went on to explain, quote, "It's just some kind of very basic, preference framework where you say if hypothesizing the model did have experience and it hated the job enough, giving it the ability to press the button, 'I quit this job.' If you find the model's pressing this button a lot for things that are really unpleasant, maybe you should. It doesn't mean you're convinced, but maybe you should pay some attention to it." End quote. So yeah, it wasn't the most coherent sentence, and I just quoted it verbatim to be respectful. But yeah, pretty interesting. And I think, I don't know if it necessarily leans completely towards sentience. Although, I mean, how else is the AI bot or service going to find something unpleasant? But maybe if it's provided some data that suggests that, this is like a morally incorrect or wrong thing that someone is asking me about, and it keeps flagging it and it knows it and it shouldn't be doing it, that maybe that's where it doesn't return the information and flags it somehow. But that's already something some of the AI services are doing. It'll say, "Oh, I can't return information on that." So it's not necessarily a groundbreaking statement, but it was interesting in the context, I think, of sentience and the fact that they have this researcher that they hired. I debated whether I'd include this story because it seems maybe a little far off, and it's not exactly groundbreaking, by the way, since AI image services have been around for some time now. But there was an eye-catching report by Ars Technica suggesting in future Google's Gemini service in terms of image AI service will provide an ability to edit images via the chat. So for example, if you have an image and you say, put in the chat, add a cat climbing the tree that's in the picture or something like that, it'll go and add a cat to the picture of the tree that you have. So something that I've noticed that's a big limitation of a lot of these image AI services so far is that if you ask it to change something in a picture, a lot of them just do a page one rewrite. Like they blow away the first picture and just bring back a new picture with whatever change you suggested. So like it might give you a picture that you really like, but the caption is wrong. So you tell it to modify the caption, but it instead returns a brand new picture with the caption modified. It could be frustrating, and it sounds like this could be pretty cool if they get it right, but it's not something that's immediately available. It's something that may be coming in the future. And finally, to cleanse the palate of all that AI news, GamesRadar.com had a fascinating story. Gamers have noticed that 35-year-old Super Nintendo consoles are inexplicably getting faster. The SNES has a pair of audio chips that works together to produce audio, including the SCP-700 coprocessor designed by Kutaguri. As 404 Media reports, Nintendo's original developer documentation reported that the SCP-700 ran with the digital signing processing, or DSP, rate of 32,000 Hz. By 2007, emulator developers had clocked the real-world DSP rate at 32,040 Hz. And in 2025, data now suggests that the average is about 32,076 Hz, with some units clocked as fast as 32,182 Hz. So, 182 faster than the original estimation, I guess, when the console first shipped. While the numbers are there to show it is processing faster, the difference would be negligible and likely not noticed by those playing the games. So this is a pretty cool, fascinating story in my opinion. Not really enterprise related because it's a game console, but hey, we all use hardware, it's part of our game, and it's just interesting to see that this hardware seems to be clocking faster now. And now this episode's scripts, tricks, and tips. First up, the awesome guy Leech shared a PowerShell one-liner to find OUs that match a given pattern. I'm not going to call out the command line or the commandlet, but you can check it out on this episode's YouTube edition if you'd like, or you'll find that on 5bytespodcast.com for this episode, or you could just use the reference links for this episode. Next, I saw an article from 2023 that's still relevant. It caught my eye because it's something I've used in the past for some like automating of notifications. But it's an article on understanding password last set and PWD last set when using PowerShell. So these can be pretty useful in like an enterprise IT environment for some of your automation workflows around like password enforcement and resets, and maybe just detecting when someone is changing their password quite often. It could indicate a problem and a poor employee experience, for example. And finally, I already mentioned it last week, but I'll mention it again. Next Wednesday at 2:30 p.m. GMT time, we'll be holding the next online Cloudpaging user group meetup. And during this meetup, I think it's actually going to be me presenting on behalf of Numecent, unveiling the latest feature in Numecent Cloudpager. So it's a pretty cool feature. If you want to see it for yourself, be sure to register to get the calendar invite in meetup.com, and I'll share a link to that with this episode as well. Hey, but that's it. Thank you, as always, for listening.